leadership transitions are obviously it's a routine topic for leaders today,
Sure.
Which is why we chose this particular topic for us to speak about today. And I realized after talking with you and texting back and forth that this is a strong passion of yours, and you have your own story of transition. And so I've asked you to be on the show today to talk about some unique things and some biblical things regarding transitions. And so can you kick us off by just elaborating on your advocacy for conversations surrounding successful leadership transitions?
Absolutely. This statement is not original with me. I don't know who to ascribe it to, but I definitely adhere to it. We would all agree, and that this is very obvious, one of the resonating passions that you have, that everything rises and falls on leadership. That's a very commonly held tenet, and I believe that. But really, if we take it to its logical conclusion and we're buying into the kingdom that we are representing, which is eternal, then we want our impact to even outlast us. It's something that I'm not wanting to die with me. So in order for my leadership and influence to impact beyond my lifespan, then it's very important that we deal with transition. So I really think everything really rises and falls on the successful transition of leadership. Because if we don't nail it in transition, it's possible to build something in our life that I know this is a bit of a play on words, but we kill in our death. When we die, it dies. So in order to prevent that, I think we have to talk about transition. Yeah.
So just for clarification, I mean, we have business leaders, business Christian leaders on this podcast. We have, ministry leaders that work a full-time job and volunteer in their church. And then we have pastors and even full-time staff, things of that nature. I would say that is probably applicable not just to senior leadership, but that's applicable to any leadership. Would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. I believe and I think you mentioned in our pre-show prep when we were, in the weeks leading up to this, I think you mentioned that you had Pastor Raymond Woodward on as a host and maybe even spoke some on transition. He made this statement, and I think it fits every level, but for sure in his position as a senior leader, that every pastor is in transition. I think none of us are in our positions forever. So it doesn't matter if I'm in the Sunday school department. It doesn't matter if I'm heading up the hospitality team or I'm a CEO of a successful company. I'm not that forever.
Yeah.
So
eventually there will be a transition one way or the other, whether you're being promoted to a different role or you're aging out or, health gets you or,
absolutely.
I guess you're always working towards a transfer of leadership in some form or fashion.
And I think this is part of what resonates with me, Ryan, as far as the passion that I have for it, is I'm the recipient of that. So I'm pastoring a church that is, somewhere around 93, I think, years of age.
Wow.
So one of the concerns that I had when I was coming into more senior leadership was look around the landscape of Christianity in general and find how many evangelical churches, how many Pentecostal churches that are 100 years old.
Yeah.
They're fewer than they are common. And so the reason that we're even here is that speaks to somewhere there's been successful transition. Somewhere Paul handed it to Timothy, and somewhere Moses handed it to Joshua, and somewhere there has been a hand off. And in my case, it's happened 3 other times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important that we don't mess it up, because the farther that we get down the corridor of success, the more paramount it is that we get it right. And so I didn't want to drop the ball, so to speak, or the baton in this particular season of our church's history.
Yeah. And I would love to hear a little bit more about, even from a personal standpoint, the transition that you experienced in your life. And I don't know if now would be appropriate or
Sure.
a little later.
Yeah. I think an interesting part of it is that my father was the pastor. And so, from an outside perspective, it probably could have the appearance that there's, some familial hierarchy component to it. But that really was not the case. It was a divinely ordained transition. But I had people coming to me and speaking to me because of the family component. That, be cautious of this. This will ruin your relationship with your dad. And so all of this contributed to a bit of a cloud of anxiety, a bit that, and I know that's maybe being a bit vulnerable there and open, but I didn't want to lose the relationship with my dad just to fulfill what I felt like God had called me to fulfill. So that awakened the awareness in me that let's get these transitional elements right.
So you got hypersensitive to the details.
Yes.
In other words, of the
and where
of the
they
transition.
could leave, where they could fall off, and where were the potholes, so to speak, in the transition process. And so because of the fact that it was a spiritual journey, and I understand that the community that we're talking to is larger than just that, but I began looking into the Word of God for what are the examples of successful transition that we can follow. And so in my case, it was the fact that we have an old church, so to speak, as far as a mature church. This is not a new church.
Right.
And then it's a father-son, naturally speaking, transition, as well as outgoing senior pastor, incoming.
Would you say
pastor.
that made it easier or harder?
I'm going to say that in the end, it was easier for me, and there may be different opinions. Everybody experiences it differently, but and we can get into this more. It takes 2 for every transition to work.
Absolutely, sort of like a marriage, huh?
Yeah, right.